Welcome into a Week 16 Giants Hangout brought to you by Crestron. Madelyn Burke, Jonathan Casillas, and Brandon London hanging out as we look ahead to the Giants' Christmas Day matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's Week 16. Giants haven't played the Eagles yet this season. They've got 2 of the next 3 games against Philly. Of course, Monday at Philadelphia and then Week 18 at home. But when you're looking at this matchup on the road on Christmas Day, Eagles are on a 3-game losing skid, JC. What kind of a team are the Giants facing this week?
That's a good question. This year's team for the Eagles this year, since the beginning of the season, they've been questioned. Are they still as good as they were last year? You know, losing their offensive coordinator, losing their defensive coordinator. And I think that answer finally answered itself the last few weeks. And the answer is no. But because they're so talented, Schmelke just told me they're like -6. How you have 10 wins and you're -6? That's how much talent they have on the team, is that they're horrible in turning the ball over and taking the ball away. And they were like #1 last year.
-6 in turnover differential.
You know, so yeah, turnover differential. And the reason why they aren't a losing team is because they're so talented. But you know this too, B. Talent only lasts for so long in terms of playing at a high level. When you're making mistakes, you're turning the ball over, you're not running the ball as well. Defensively, you're giving up a lot of points. You're only going to out-athlete and physical teams and, beat them because your players are better without a better scheme and without actually protecting the football. That doesn't happen a lot, but they were able to do it early, and now it's kind of rearing its ugly head. 49ers blew them out. They said they set the blueprint for him, keep him in the pocket. Same blueprint as a young Russell Wilson. Don't let him escape out the B gap. That was the coaching point against Russell Wilson, because he can create down the field, and he's a valuable runner as well too. But then I hear what he said after the game, talking about guys are not committed or whatever to.
Jalen Hurts, you're talking about Jalen Hurts saying, I just don't think we're committed enough coming off of that loss to the Drew Lock-led Seattle Seahawks. But Brandon, if you're looking at your locker room and your quarterback saying, I don't think we're committed enough, is that deflating or is that galvanizing for a team?
It's galvanizing because you better look within yourself, because Jalen Hurts has been one of the hardest working football players, athletes out there since his high school days. Yep. I mean, you talk about weight room work ethic, but also what he's been able to do in the classroom just to better himself as a thrower, as just an overall quarterback in general. So when a guy like that, who lays it all on the line every Sunday, comes out and says something like that, you better not go back to the podium and be like, well, what do you mean? I was in my playbook. I was in my iPad just as much as any other week. But JC, they started off 10-1. Winning masks everything. And like you said, they're so talented, they can get away with being -6. But now people are finding ways to attack this defense. People are finding ways to hold this superstar flooded offense to 20 or less points. So now the blueprint has been put out there on how to beat this team, and they've kind of been exposed the last couple of days. The Giants, forget Big Blue, they need to go full green on Christmas. You want to know why? Because they need to be the Grinch and go down there and upset and beat this team, because they haven't beaten the Eagles in, I guess, in quite some time now. So go full green, go down there and beat the wounded Eagle, because they're not who they were at the beginning of the season.
Well, and even at the beginning of the season, though, you point to the fact that winning masks everything, and it does, because you watch those early season Eagles games, it was not like this was the same team as last year that went to the Super Bowl. This was an Eagles team that was finding creative ways to win, but they weren't dominating. They weren't head and shoulders above the rest of the talent the way that the San Francisco 49ers have been playing in the NFC. And Brandon, you mentioned, like, in recent years, the last 30 matchups, the Eagles have won 24 of them. The Giants just don't have success against the Eagles in recent memory. Especially down in Philly, but it would mean a lot if they can, find that way and kind of use this last few weeks of what has worked for other teams. But then, of course, the Eagles watching the last few weeks too, seeing that, teams coming with defensive stunts against this offensive line. And that has once again, shown some issue for this front.
And Jalen Hurts has been humanized. Last year, I think we all was like, if he would have got voted MVP last year, everybody would be like, oh, okay, he deserved it because he played well. His team was really good. You know, I mean, rushing touchdowns, efficiency throwing the football, not turning the ball over, all of those things. It's totally opposite this year. He's been a little banged up, especially with his knees, lower body. So the quarterback run game hasn't been that prevalent. I think that's the reason why they're not, I won't say struggling running the ball, but they're not running the ball as efficiently as they was last year, which they were tremendous last year running the football and also turning the ball over. You know, he had 7 total turnovers last year. I think he had 17 on the year, 5 lost fumbles and however many picks that is. My math is not great all the time. You know, and that's the reason why when you look at they're not playing as complimentary football as they were last year, because last year they would get up on teams and they'd be able to run the ball down the team's throat. And then they had 5 guys with double-digit sacks last year. And it's just they're not playing as complimentary as they played last year. So this is a team that, for me, not as scary as they were last year. All year last year, I kept talking about them. I'm scared of the Eagles because they're so good. They're so talented. Yes, they're so talented, but they're not as good. They're not as good. They're not as efficient. They're not as powerful running the football. Like, bro, they had over 700 yards in 3 games last year versus the Giants.
Well, you talk about running the football, though, and I'd be remiss not to bring up a man that Giants fans are well familiar with, one Boston Scott, who most of the year is just, you know, Boston Scott. But when he plays
special teams,
when he plays the Giants, he is Hall of Famer Boston Scott, because this man has never played a game against the Giants and not scored a touchdown. In 9 games against the Giants, Boston Scott has scored 11 touchdowns.
And he probably had what 13 career touchdowns in that span.
Let's find out.
I feel like that streak
If
will
I'm right,
end.
that'd be crazy.
I feel like this is the game where that streak will end, but I'm not. If that streak ends, then to me it's like who cares in that sense, because this is a trap game, y'all. And I'm not gonna say trap game for the Eagles. I'm saying, like, as a Giants fan and a media guy, as a player, you're looking at it, hey, they're kind of wounded. James Bradbury hasn't been playing that well. Let's throw at them. Let's go. They let Drew Lock beat them. Let's go down there, handle business. But as a media guy, as a fan, you're still looking at it like these dudes still have weapons. These dudes can still run the ball. The Giants struggle against the run. These dudes can still throw the ball around, and their offensive line is still solid, intact, and still playing somewhat well in the sense. So, JC, are you looking at, let's flip it. If you're on the Eagles, you're 0-3 in the last 3 games. Is there pressure on you for a must win, or are you like, man, this is a get right game? Let's go after these boys.
For me personally, as a player, if I was playing for that squad, I would definitely be like, it's a get right game. All right, guys, you know, like, let's get back to what we do well, you know, and I think what they do well, the Giants don't hold up against, you know, the quarterback run game in general. You know, the Giants, they do a good job in handling the passing offenses whenever, you know, teams have a prolific passing offense. The Giants, I feel like, counter that very well. But teams can have success against the Giants running the football. And I think that's something that you want to do, and you definitely want to get a lead early. You know, maybe even they brought out a fake punt against the Cowboys. I mean, they were kind of flailing against the Cowboys, bro. Yep. They fake punt, defensive touchdown, like they were flailing. They had to get something going because the Cowboys just outright beat them. So it is a get-right game for them, I would think, for them mentally, but it's also a trap game for both teams because the Giants don't want to be like, oh, you know, we got a wounded animal, you know, we're going to a wounded animal's house, and then also you don't want to be an Eagles guy. Go ahead.
Do you think it's helpful that the Giants are also coming off of a loss rather than, you know, a 4-game win streak or what have you? Because then that kind of makes it like, okay, let's you know.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think that kind of hurts how the Giants respond.
I think that kind of hurts them in a way because you're looking at what was at stake going down there playing New Orleans, even though it was home, you're in the Superdome, everyone, you know, it gets loud up in there, but that was a wasted opportunity for this team. So if you would have won that game going into a wounded Philly and knowing the history between those two teams, I think the Giants would have been walking in the link with their chest out. Now I think the players, they go in with a little bit more humble and they're like, all right, this is the game we can win, but we have to make sure we handle all business businesses on all fronts in that sense. So
I think though that humility is what will keep them from having it be a trap game, right? For the Giants, because if they're coming in off that like, oh, look at this, we just beat New Orleans 4 in a row, we're in the playoff picture, and now we're going against a wounded Philly team, that might be a little bit of a trap game scenario for the Giants, as opposed to like, oh, we've just been humbled. We've seen what we're capable of on a 3-game winning streak, but we've also seen what happens when we don't, rise to the occasion fully. Let's make sure we're on our P's and Q's.
But because of that talent that they have on the Eagles roster, you can't just dip your toe in the water on that against this team. You got a backflip in there. So I get what I was saying. Like, if you would have beat the Saints, you would have come in there. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
can we get an instant replay on that? What was that one more time?
It was a triple axle leg tuck with the splash.
I thought it was like eating something very fast.
It was jumping off a diving board. I'm big on special effects, but you know what I'm saying, JC? You could, I mean, yeah, you can go in there humble, but at the end of the day, playing against a team with that loaded roster like that, I just look at it where Tommy DeVito needs to go in there and, like, if Drew Lock can do it with the backpack celebration, I'm doing this all over Lincoln Financial Field on Monday.
Yeah, the Giants have to figure out how to drive down 95, the trip they make every single year. We've all made that drive. It sucks. It's not a great drive. They don't have traffic because they got a police escort, but the drive sucks. You know when it sucks? On the way back, because they always lose. The Giants have to figure out how to make that ride a lot better, because if you drive down to 95 and you get a victory, that drive back is so sweet and is so quick on the way back with no police escort on the way back. The Giants have to figure out how to do something they just haven't done in forever.
Right. Well, and a lot of it too, talking about driving down 95, maybe driving 95 yards down the field as well, against a defense that is now run by Matt Patricia, because the Eagles, of course, in week 15 kind of quietly made a change, moving Sean Desai off the sideline in a different role, also still kind of associated with the defense, but bringing Matt Patricia in as a defensive coordinator. And we saw how that last drive went when Drew Lock led the Seahawks down the field against that defense. As a defensive player, when you've got a shakeup of your coordinator at that point in the season too, I mean, some people will say, I mean, Brandon, you say this too, like your coordinator is almost more of a change up than the head coach, because that's the person you're talking to. That's the communication you're getting. That's like
it changes scheme.
Exactly.
Not just culture.
So how much will that affect the way that this Eagles defense functions?
Well, it affects it very much. It could be good or bad. I don't know. Last week, it was his first time. So every time you step in as the first time, it could be good or bad, extremely good, whatever the case is. It's a question. We don't know. But he has now a week underneath himself with these players. I think the two things that are bothering them right now is their health at corner and then also the play at corner. Slay being out, I don't know if he's out for this game or if what the question is for him for this game, but then also Bradbury. Bradbury's not playing at that Pro Bowl level like we seen him a few years ago. His first year with the Giants, he played at a very high level. His first year with the Eagles last year, he played at a very high level. With them being, him struggling right now, corner, and Slade not being a healthy participant, that's one of the reasons why they're struggling in the passing game. Last year, they were like number 1. This year, they're like 29th. And if you can't cover guys, you can't sack them. You can't get them on the ground. Last year, they were number 1 or 2 in sacks. They had 4 or 5, number 1. They had 70 sacks.
They had a record set 70 sacks, and they had every down lineman had double-digit sacks on the season.
Insane. They're not doing that because they're not covering as much as they were last year. They're not as tight, so it's complimentary football, and they just haven't done it to the level that we witnessed them last year do it consistently the entire year. They did it. This year, they found different ways to win it. They found ways because A.J. Brown's special. Devontae Smith is special. Hassan Riddick is special. He can change a game. Jalen Hurts is special, but not collectively as a team. I don't know. They're not as special as they were last year. Right. Do they have special players? Absolutely. But they're not as special as there was last year. So we could use your quote that you always like to use. So you say.
So you're telling me there's a chance. And when you all that 1 in a million talk, shout out to Pearson Butler.
Yeah.
If there's 2 people right now who kind of doing the Birdman hands and walk into the offensive line room and is like, hey, if you guys hold up, we will deliver for y'all. That's Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt. because the Eagles corners have dollar signs written over them right now. James Bradbury follows me on Instagram still, you know, I really like him.
Flex on him, B.
Liked him when he was here, but he's giving it up right now, JC. If you're in that receiver meeting room, you're sitting there like, please just go max protection if you have to. Let us go after this guy. On the other end, if Darius Slate doesn't play, Keely Ringo, second-round draft pick out of Georgia. Loved him at Georgia. Love his length, love his range, but he's a young guy out there. You can go at him as well. And the flip it, and last but not least, the third person who should be sitting there with the Birdman hands, Darren Waller. The Eagles linebackers can't cover, and they are the weakness on this defense. TJ Edwards left with Jonathan Gannon and went out to Arizona. He was their best linebacker. They now have that hole there in that linebacker core. There are plays to be made in that against that secondary and possibly with one-on-one with the tight end and the linebackers. But the offensive line has to hold up because there's Jalen Carter, Hassan Riddick, Fletcher Cox, the list just goes on and on. So my dad growing up used to say, you're only as good as your O-line. If you want to play spoiler on Christmas and put a lump of coal in their stockings, the offensive line has to hold up to allow the receivers to make plays on the outside.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm in full agreement. And last year, what the Eagles did to the Giants was flat out embarrassing. You know, in 3 games,
Which
they had
time?
over, that's what I'm saying. In 3 games, they had over 700 rushing yards. They rushed for 250 twice, fam. Twice, bro. Like one time giving up 250 to one team will haunt you forever. They did it twice, bro. Over 250 yards. That means they beat the Giants up front. Like your dad said, they beat them like that. Like you can't talk. I can't say nothing to my guys that love Eagles. I can't say nothing. All my guys that love the Eagles fans around Jersey, I can't argue that because the Giants got dismantled last year by this team. The Giants have to figure out a way to put it on their side where they can run the football down these guys' throat because the Giants can run the football. They just have to find creative ways to do it. And I was talking to Schmelke and BBKL. The Giants have to figure out what their identity is on offense. Right? We know Tommy DeVito is going to be the quarterback. There's no question about that. They're not going to take him out. They're going to let him struggle if he struggles. I think how it's going to go right now. So allow the Giants to figure out what is your bread and butter. When you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they say, oh, when they run to the left where Trent Williams at, they're averaging 6 yards a carry. And they have 150 runs to the left. That's their bread and butter. Like the Giants have to figure out.
They've been listening to
they have to figure out what works for them and then have counter plays off of that. Right. The Eagles, they got their tush push, right? That's the most efficient play in football right now.
Yeah.
But you know what they got off of that, B? They have a counter off of that. Literally,
a sweep
they're giving the ball
off of that,
to somebody else. So the Giants have to figure out something offensively that's their bread and butter that they can rely on, and it needs to involve number 26.
But I think a lot of it has to do with just having personnel that is head and shoulders above. No. But what I mean is like the reason the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever we're calling it, has a 96% success rate is not just because Jalen Hurts has like ridiculous leg strength and can churn through, but because Jason Kelce in the front and like the strength of that offensive line is a fortress, is a wall. It's like a moving wall. And that's why a lot of other teams don't have that success rate. The reason is, 49ers have such success going to the left, it's because Trent Williams is such a success right there. Like the Giants, you need more than just one ridiculously talented player to make a play foolproof because, that's why even Wink Martindale today in his media availability, one of the first questions he's asked is like, have you figured out how to deal with the Eagles on 4th and 1? Because that tush push, and he's like, well, everybody probably says, yeah, but, we're going to give it our best shot and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. They're efficient.
Yeah.
They're really efficient in what they do and what they do well. Right. And I'm thinking about like if you take an axe, right, and you're just hacking at a tree in different spots, you're not going to never cut down a tree. But if you're hitting that thing at the right angle, at the right spot, it'll take way less, strikes to get that down. What I'm saying is the Eagles have efficient plays that they fall back on. That 3rd and 1 play is so efficient. It's like hitting that tree with that axe in the same spot over and over again. You can't stop the tree from falling. And I was talking to Schmelk about it. maybe the Giants can figure out an unconventional way to stop it. Because I don't think you can line up and say, we're going to out wedge your wedge. We're going to we're going to stop your guys from doing what they do the best. Maybe you do something like stand the guys up, the defensive lineman up. I don't know, just something unconventional that goes differently than what every single person has failed to do this year because they went into conventional ways. And you're going to line up, we're just tougher than you. And it's like, it's not about being tough. It's about being efficient. It's about technique. And the Cowboys figured out a way to do it.
Yeah.
The
Work
Giants
smarter,
need
not
something,
harder.
right?
Yeah.
The Giants need something that they have that they do better than everybody else, or they do at a more efficient level than everybody else. And until I think the Giants figure that out offensively, you're going to see the different play calling of Kafka. Kafka's trying to figure out what works for the Giants. Last week, we saw a lot of max protection, but guess what? Nobody was open down the field last week. The week prior, you saw a lot of kind of 5 out, maybe 1 in protection, 4 to 5 receivers, and it worked for him. But then the Saints come in and passing y'all, and he's like an all-pro, 3 sacks. I don't know how many, 2.5, 3 sacks. It looked like 3 sacks to me. Balling out. So now they're trying to protect, but then nobody's open. The Giants have to figure out when stuff like that is happening, what do we fall back on? What do we rely on that can kind of get us out of trouble?
Well, that's where the players got to kind of play complementary football with the coaching. If you're Mike Kafka, and like you said, you're getting 5 out, you're keeping 1 guy in to kind of help block, and your offensive line is having an efficient day, then that makes it a lot easier to call route concepts and get different guys the football. But like you said, when you got a max protect and they were still getting after DeVito with max protection, you got to come to your guys and be like, hey, man, you guys got to help me out here. You guys got to help me play ball here, because Saquon running the football 9 for 14, Tommy DeVito leading the team in rushing for 4 for 36. That's not going to get you anything against this Eagles defense. And that will be sad because, like we said, there's money out there with them corners, with this secondary. So it's one of those things where this is collectively, JC, whoever that leader is in the locker room, this is one of those games where it's like, hey, there's no golf bags or in the locker room right now. We're about to play this thing out. We about to be the Grinch. We about to play spoiler with everybody, because you got Eagles, Rams on the cusp of the bubble trying to get into the playoffs, and you got Eagles again. So now's a chance where you just get to, you know what? Forget if we lose. I just want to go beat somebody up. Let's just remember Casillas, week 1. Go out to week 2, go out there and just punch somebody in the face and get the flag. I'm not saying do all that, but have that type of mentality going down to the link. My man said, punch somebody in the face.
Something. I mean, hey, to quote Ryan Gosling in The Notebook, it wasn't over, and it still isn't over, right? Like, this is, yes, we are conjuring The Notebook today to motivate for this game. But Brandon, I mean, one of the things too, you talk about the run game, getting the run game going. Passing game though is something. I mean, you saw that very first play down in New Orleans; they went for it. Tommy DeVito to Darius Slayton. You could see the timing was a bit off, and it was a little underthrown by DeVito because Slayton had to stop up his slow up his route, and then the defender caught up and closed the gap. How do you kind of, is some of that just kind of like, okay, play 1, nerves, a little jitters, get it out of there? Or is it like, is this something like, okay, let's work on this timing this week, let's get this down? Because Tommy DeVito has shown he is not afraid to send it down the field, and the Giants have had success when they can get the ball down the field. So how do you fix that?
It's just one of those things where, when it comes to the go route and you got a guy like Darius Slayton or Jalen Hyatt, 9 times out of 10, you're going to underthrow them. When Tommy DeVito doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, I would just say fling it out there. The way you threw it in practice, throw it even more in the game, because there's one thing in practice where you got a scout team guy running behind Darius Slayton, and you're going to give up that easy catch because you don't want any collisions in practice. But game speed is 10 times faster. Them dudes are moving 10 times faster. So it's one of those things, when you got that speed on the outside, make them be wrong. Throw it out there. If they don't catch it on their fingertips, I can't overthrow you. You're a 4-3 guy. I shouldn't be able to overthrow you. So when it comes to that, and it is something that if you connect on that early, Madelyn, JC, they're coming back to that, especially against these corners. So that's something that within the 2 rooms, quarterbacks and receivers, tight ends, when they all meet together, they're talking about that right now, how they've got to play big. They've got to connect on the opportunities that they have to make chunk plays against this Philadelphia Eagles defense, because that right there, if they can hit 3 plays of over 20 yards, I feel like the Giants give themselves a chance to not only stay in the game, but to win it.
Yeah. And my thing is what I saw last week from the Giants, which is like a recipe for disaster. They were not good on first and second down last week, which got them into a lot of third and long situations. And I'm not talking about, and I hope this is not what you're talking about, that deep ball should not come on third down and only third down. It needs to come at other times of the game. You know, like when you get a turnover possibly in that plus, situation that, that shot zone. First down, throw it deep. Second and 1, second and 2, throw it deep. But that means you have to be a little more efficient on first and second down and get yourself in some manageable third downs so that deep ball is not coming on third down when everyone knows the deep ball is coming on third down, because you have to gain 17 yards. So the Giants have to be a lot more efficient on first and second downs. And I think that's the recipe that will help them win this game. Because if they're behind the sticks and they're doing third and longs against Hassan Reddick, Carter, and all of those guys that you named, even Brandon Graham, he's still out there rushing. Bro, we played in the same game together when we was in college. The guy's still playing football right now at a high level. Tip my hat to him. But screw him. We're playing again. He's going to lose. But doing a better job on first and second down would, like, if they would have did a good job on first, second down last week, it would have been a better game.
Yeah.
They have to do that or it won't be close at all going down 95 to Philadelphia, because Philadelphia, if they are stopping the run on first and second down and getting the Giants in the third and long, this will be a get right game for the Eagles. And the Giants will get blown out if they don't do good on first and second down. They have to against this team. They're just too talented.
And that starts with being creative with 2-6.
Yes.
If you got to go to Saquon and be like, hey, this is going to be a hard team to run the ball against. You might get less than 10 carries, but you might get 5 catches in the passing game. We might move you around in a bunch of different spots, motion you, jet sweep you, keep all eyes on you. Matt Brady got to come up big this game. Gary Brightwell, if you're cleared to play and you get some reps, you got to come up and absolutely. So it's one of those things where running backs are going to have to touch the ball on a 4-yard throw, 5-yard throw, and that might be the run game for them because it's going to be hard to run the ball. But again, using 2-6 is some sort of decoy, get him his electrolytes, run him around a lot, different jet sweeps and motions and stuff like that. That's going to help you on first and second down, be more efficient, stay ahead of the chains, and just make things easier on young Tommy DeVito on a third down against this defensive front.
We'll see how it all shakes out.
And I like what you're saying about, about how offensively you take it. And then also, I think what the Giants have done well since Tommy DeVito's been playing quarterback is the quarterback run game. And that's something last year that got the Giants to the playoffs.
Well, and that's something that last week, because, on that Monday night game against the Packers, the quarterback run game came a lot of success because the second he saw the pass rush, he was decisive and said, okay, I'm going to use my legs. I'm going to get a couple yards. Whereas last week, it seemed like he was not as quick to say, he took his time a little bit more, and that's why 7 sacks on the game.
But remember, they were max protecting more last week than they were week prior.
Sure, but still, I think when you've got that max protection, he's trusting that max protection and not thinking, I see them coming, I got to run for it, because he's like, oh, I have a little bit more security now. It's like, no, it doesn't matter how much security there's out front. You see him coming, you run for it.
Yep. No, and also the declared quarterback run game.
Right.
Not just him pulling the ball down.
Right.
I feel like those were the best play calls last week. I mean, they were the biggest plays. But what the Giants failed to do last week, they had 3 big plays on one drive. It was 2 14-yard runs by DeVito and whatever 20-something yard pass to Darren Waller, and they got no points out of that. That's the stuff that cannot happen. You just said it, a couple big plays. That usually equals some type of points, whether it's a field goal or not. The Giants cannot get big plays and not score points.
Well, and also they need to win the turnover battle, because that was the key to success in all of their wins last week. And they didn't get a single takeaway.
At least +2.
And it's like, and that I think is why the offense has had success, because it's been such favorable field position that the offense has been able to work on a short field, get into the end zone, and put some points on the board, as opposed to having to drive, 75, 80, 90 yards down the field And so if the defense can put the offense in a favorable position, offense gets some points on the board, I think that's the recipe for success.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, got to be big games for Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Okereke on the next level, Xavier McKinney on the back end. Each one of those guys got to step up, play big, because like you said, those turnovers, you got to give this offense extra possessions. But hey, that's why we play the game. It's going to be a great Christmas Day slugfest.
Christmas miracle. Right? Not no. So you're telling me there's a chance. Listen, Giants, Eagles, Christmas Day. I don't care what the history books say, because over the course of time, it's pretty evenly split in this series, going back to 1933. I'm just saying, if we're going all the way back like a recliner, it's pretty evenly split. But we'll see how this one goes. Monday afternoon, Giants, Eagles at the Link, 4:30 Eastern. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out with us on this week's Giants Hangout, brought to you by Crestron with Brandon London, Jonathan Casillas. I'm Madelyn Burke. We'll see you next time.